everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Marie and I'm a South African living in Singapore for the past 6 years now, and I make videos about life in Singapore. When you move to a new country, no matter where in the world, you're bound to be a little bit weirded out or ask yourself a few things like, huh? What? Okay. And then you soon learn, well, you're gonna have to adapt and change and get used to this because this is your new life. And so yes, that happened to me when I moved to South Korea and when I moved to Singapore. And actually also when I moved back to South Africa, well, that's another story. I first visited Singapore in 2011 and then I decided to move to Singapore in 2013. And Singapore is not my first Asian country that I lived in. I first lived in South Korea. There are some similarities between Asian countries, but today I want to share more of the things that I found a little bit strange or weird when I first moved to Singapore. Now, I'm telling you, about 99% of these things are not weird to me anymore, and I've just adapted to life in Singapore. You can check out my video about where I talk about how much I have changed since living in Singapore. I actually made 2 videos about that, a part 1 and a part 2, because I've changed quite a bit in the past 6 years. And so when you move to a new country, you need to be open to change. So thinking back to when I first visited Singapore in 2011, which is like 10 years ago, and when I first moved to Singapore in 2013, I really had to think about this one as well in terms of what did I find strange and what might be strange to you if you were to move to Singapore today. Now, I think the first thing that if I think back to 2011 when I first visited Singapore was when I strolled down Orchard Road one day, observing in awe all the high-end shops on Orchard. And then I saw an uncle with an ice cream truck, bicycle. And so I was like, oh, I want to get some ice cream. Now, Marie being Marie, loves food. Yes, I bought an ice cream. $1, ka-ching, ka-ching. Super cheap. But then the uncle put the slice of ice cream in a slice of bread. I was like, what? How do these two go together? But strangely enough, it was delicious. I would highly recommend having a sandwich ice cream when you are in Singapore. Now another thing, I know people love specials. You love a sale, you love a store opening, a restaurant opening, you love it when there's free stuff that's given out. But you know, when you walk past a place and you see there's a queue, you are not really going to join the queue. You might come back later and be like, okay, I'll join the queue if it's not as long anymore. But in Singapore, people love to queue. I think if queuing was an Olympic sport, Singapore would take gold every time. But I figured out why and how Singaporeans can queue for that long. A few years ago, Shake Shack opened up at Jewel Changi Airport, and I hate queues. I figured out the art of queuing. You go in a group and you alternate about who is in line. So if the queue is about 2 hours long, you and your friends go and you stand in the queue and you alternate. So one person will stay in the queue and then the rest of you can go have a walk around, go do some window shopping. And so you take turns of queuing. And that actually really helps. And Singaporeans are very good at queuing and they're very kind and no one really cuts the queue. Everyone's really respectful of one another in the queue and understands, like, you know what, we're kind of in this together. We're going to queue for a while, so we might as well just be kind to one another. Another thing that I've actually realized when I moved to South Korea, but more so when I moved to Singapore, is that people live with their parents until they're married. Now, I consider myself being very independent because the moment I turned 18, I was like, bye-bye mom, bye-bye dad, and I was out of the house, like, went to study. And so for me, one of my goals in life was to move out of the house as soon as I turned 18. And I made that a reality. And I moved to another city to go and study, which is, I think, fairly normal in the Western countries because, you know, the country is big, you move to another city to go and study. I was always about like, I'm gonna live by myself, I'm independent, I travel alone, I do things by myself. The concept of living with your parents at first was like, but you need to start learning about the culture. You need to start learning about the environment, of course. People in Singapore live with their parents, of course, first culturally as well, but this place is only that big. There's not a lot of space and it's really expensive to get a place on your own in Singapore. I think Singaporeans are quite smart to continue that tradition of living with your parents until you're married, to save money. I mean, you save so much money by living with your parents. And now I kind of regret moving out of the house so early and so young. But I mean, it taught me other life lessons. Another shock I had when I moved to Singapore was the rental prices. Oh my goodness. In South Africa, you can get a mansion. You can get a mansion with 6 bedrooms, movie theater in your house, bathrooms for each room, like swimming pool, gym, everything, and then a Lamborghini and probably a Ferrari as well parked in your home for the amount that you buy a 3-bedroom condo in Singapore. That broke my brain. I just couldn't understand it. Coming from South Africa, of course it's different because we have so much space. You can't really compare the two, but in South Africa, what you can get in South Africa per month to what you get in Singapore per month. It took me a long while to get used to the rental prices in Singapore. Another thing that was a bit strange for me to get used to when I first moved to Singapore was the concept, well, I don't really know if it's a concept, but the term of tiger parenting. I've never heard of that term before I moved to Singapore. When I first started learning about the different parenting styles in Singapore and in Asia in general, that was quite something that took me aback. It's something that's still with me, which I need to try to understand a bit more. But I feel like tiger parenting does more harm than good in the long run when you look at the students' mental and social well-being. But I mean, that's something that was strange for me in the beginning and it's still strange for me now. But if you look at the history and you look at the culture and you look at the expectations in Asia and what is expected of you, it is very different from Western culture. And of course, I can't impose my thoughts and my ways on everyone here. I need to adapt accordingly as well. But I am happy to see as well that parents are starting to understand that tiger parenting is not always the way to go. But yeah, it was just a little bit something for me that it was strange, especially in the sector that I work in, education. Alright, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed my video. If you did, please remember to give it a like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. And I'll see you next week. I post a new video every Friday. Bye!